The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is under even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, Happy New Year to all. It's very good to see you all again. In the Lunar New Year, in China, it's the year of the rabbit. However, I learned in Vietnam, it's the year of the cat. For reasons known only to the Vietnamese, not to me. But anyway, it's Happy Year of the Rabbit or Year of the Cat or 2023. For the talk today, I've been reading a chapter in this book called The Sound of Silence by Ajahn Sumedho, and some of you may have read this book. Ajahn Sumedho is a Western monk in the Theravadan tradition. He's in the lineage of the Thai forest master Ajahn Chah. And I found useful teaching in this chapter that I'd like to pass along the best I can. And I'll be talking about the subject of identity or personality. We all have one or more, and it's been bringing up some questions as I've been doing the reading. Questions of who or what am I? Where did this person, this I, come from, and where is it going? What does it matter? Does it matter? So these are some of the questions that have been rolling around with me. Ajahn Sumedho's chapter on identity begins with questions, and he begins with the questions, is there anyone, any person, or any condition that is absolutely right or absolutely wrong? Can right and wrong, or good and bad, be absolute? And if you're familiar with Great Master Dogen's rules for meditation, it says, think of neither good nor evil, consider neither right nor wrong. So Ajahn Sumedho is considering, is there anyone, any person or condition that is absolutely right or absolutely wrong? Can right and wrong or good and bad be absolute? He goes on to say that in looking at our identity in terms of the way things really are, that our apparent identity has no more substance than foam on the sea, like dreams, like illusions, like bubbles, like shadows, like dew, like lightning, in the words of the Diamond Sutra. When we withdraw within and reflect upon ourselves, we can see identity as a complex set of such illusions based on karma, volitional habit energy, and conditioning. Now, this is nothing new to many or most of you because it has to do with the Buddhist teaching on anatta, or no separate or enduring individual self. We can begin by accepting this teaching on an intellectual level. Okay, I can see that I'm different from when I was a child, in some ways. I can see that people grow old and die. I can see that we all, human beings, have something in common with other human beings, and we all have something in common with animals and other living things. However, I want to talk about understanding this truth from the point of view of meditation, of seeing things as they really are. And then what to do about it, with meditation as our guide. Now, getting back to Ajahn Sumedho's questions, he teaches that our notions of right and wrong, or yours and mine, are like bubbles in a stream. And he goes on to talk about ways in which clinging to such created illusions can cause anguish, even bloodshed. For example, when nations go into war over disputed territory. This land is mine. No, this land is mine, from one country to another, or one leader to another. Buddhists learn the teaching of anatta, or no individual separate self, which is, for me anyway, a difficult teaching. One reason it's difficult is that questioning it or challenging it can feel threatening to one's very existence, life-threatening. Also, when we face the creation we think of as myself, it can look ugly in its raw self-centeredness. And it looks much bigger than it really is. It takes a strong trust in universal benevolence in order to face oneself with both honesty and non-judgmental compassion. So what is this self thing anyway? And why should we care? Ajahn Sumedho writes that we manufacture a whole realm of illusion, personality, and identity through the perceptions that we create in our minds. The dictionary defines perception as a mental image, awareness of elements of the environment through the senses, and physical sensation interpreted in the light of experience, like dreams, like illusions, like foam on the sea, is how the Diamond Sutra puts it. My mother and her mother used to argue over a certain color. Let's call it blue, green, or turquoise. One of them might spot an item of clothing and say, "Look at that nice blue dress." The other one might answer, "It isn't blue, it's green." My mother might think she was putting on a blue dress, and her mother might scold her for wearing green because it doesn't suit her. Their perceptions of the same color, coming in through two different sets of eyes, were at times different enough to cause a bit of interpersonal friction. Who's right? Who's wrong? What difference does it make? That's a small, trivial example. But if we think about it, we all have our notions of blue and green, fair and unfair, sickness and health, justice and injustice. Those are just a few, and you can choose your own. The late head of our order, Reverend Master Daizui, referred to the notion of self as a convenient fiction. It's convenient because on the practical level, it allows us to open a bank account, get a driver's license, etc. So it works in a practical way. If I'm driving a car with a license that says Margaret and not a license that says Jane Doe, and the police stop me, it's convenient. On an emotional level, it can give us a comforting sense of security and stability. Even if we identify ourselves in a negative way, I'm a selfish monster, or I'm an invalid, it seems to be something we can rely on. A base of operations, so to speak. I'm a selfish monster, and I need money, therefore it's okay for me to rob a bank. I'm an invalid, therefore I can't do much of anything, lest it worsen my condition. And I know that one from personal experience, past experience especially, trying to find a balance between pushing out of the comfort zone and exhausting myself. Like any other fiction, our convenient fiction is a creation, helped along by our culture, our family, our schools, television, radio, the internet. We ourselves create the illusion of an enduring personality self out of things that flow through our senses and from our thoughts and emotions. We know this, there's nothing new here. The problem comes not from the experience of our senses, but from grasping at the perceptions and clinging to them as true reality. As Buddhists, we aspire to go beyond knowing it to practicing with it. Going on beyond this human mind, he is nirvana, as it says in the scripture of great wisdom. Going on beyond this human mind doesn't mean judging it, getting rid of it, or practicing with it in order to convert it, but rather practicing with it and being with it as it is converted, allowing it to be converted, neither grasping nor pushing away. And this isn't something we can understand with the intellect. These words can only point to something much deeper, but we can experience it for ourselves. So what is this something much deeper? Again, those are only words. Ajahn Sumedho speaks of it as an intuitive sense, an intelligence beyond all the knowledge and cleverness of our minds. And he warns us about trying to make this into something personal, something of our own. He goes on, we always have to let go of the personal perceptions, because as soon as we claim them, we're creating another illusion. And claiming them means grasping at them and hanging on to them, clinging to them. It also means pushing them away while clinging to them. You notice that Ajahn Sumedho used the words, let go. We always have to let go of the personal perceptions. He's not talking about bludgeoning them into submission. He's talking about letting go of them. Opening the hand of thought, as the late Japanese master Uchiyama Roshi used to say. Opening the hand of thought. Allowing things to arise, abide, and pass. And it's this intuitive sense that Ajahn Sumedho mentioned. That's what has brought us to sit in these chairs right here. It's what keeps bringing us back to our place of meditation, whether that's on a chair or on a cushion or in the stillness of our hearts while standing in line at the market or in traffic, two of my favorite places for meditation. Ajahn Sumedho writes of the courage it takes to allow this illusory world to fall apart, and of his own fear in facing the unreality of personality. And I'm going to read you a short passage from this book of his. He writes, we can be very threatened when these illusions are challenged. I remember first questioning the reality of my personality. It scared me to death. When I started questioning, even though I wasn't particularly overconfident and didn't have great self-esteem, and then in parenthesis he puts, I have never been prone to megalomania, usually the opposite, very self-critical, end parentheses. So when I started questioning, I felt very threatened when that security, that confidence in being this screwed up personality was being threatened. There is a sense of stability, even among people who identify themselves with illnesses or other negative things like alcoholism. The steady, ongoing practice of meditation, with its gentle, gradual opening to truth, gives us the courage that Ajahn Sumedho mentions, says that we need in letting go of our so-called personality construction. One of the most important teachings I received from my master was, I could be wrong. And this has served me as an anchor in all kinds of situations throughout my years of training. In everything from the most trivial, that is that dress blue or green, to matters of great importance. I spoke earlier of facing oneself with both honesty and compassion. Several days ago, I had an experience of facing mistakes, both mine and others, in this way, and it was meditation that helped me do this. One morning, there was some confusion regarding the rising time. We'd been getting up at 6:30 through most of January. However, on this particular day, we'd scheduled a 7 o'clock rising time in order to get a little extra rest. This was published on our monthly and weekly schedules. However, everyone, including myself, doesn't always read the schedules. It was only at 6 o'clock on that very morning that I noticed that rising was to be at 7 that day. And at 6:20, I saw that the designated monk had turned the cloister lights on, which we do right about the time of rising. And I thought, uh-oh, what's going on here? I checked the schedules again, and they both said 7 o'clock. And this only served to deepen the confusion in my mind. Rising is at 7 this morning. Meditation is at 7:30. I'm right about this, and that's the way it is. Okay, that's where I landed. When I went to the meditation hall at 7:20, several monks were already seated there in meditation, and they didn't look as though they had just arrived. By all rights, I should have sat in the Buddha hall so as not to disturb them, but the notion of meditation is at 7:30 prevailed in my confused brain, and I marched right on in. Then, sitting on my seat, I realized my mistakes, plural mistakes. It would have been better to sit in the Buddha hall and not to disturb everyone by coming in. Furthermore, I could have looked at the schedule the previous day and announced the later rising time to the community. So there I was sitting on my seat, roiling with the strong emotions of shame, embarrassment, and stupidity, wondering how I could have made such a mess, I sat right in the midst of it. I determined I was going to stick with my meditation and sit right in the midst of it. And like all emotions, those feelings eventually passed. I went on into morning service, and afterwards I apologized to the monks and resolved to put a stronger focus on broadcasting the schedule. There was also our precept on being proud of myself and devaluing others. It took a strong dose of pride to feel that I myself had been solely responsible for this great calamity. I could be wrong. In the scope of the universe, it wasn't an enormous calamity. And others too had been mistaken in not looking at the schedules, but they weren't to blame any more than I was. And we all survived. Clinging to my sense of personal identity, I could cling to seeing myself as either wrong by going in the Buddha hall and by not announcing the schedule, or right. After all, rising was at 7 o'clock, meditation was at 7:30. Letting go of that attachment to personal identity allowed me to apologize for my mistakes, leave the building, and get on with the day. This brings us to the attempt to answer the question, so what, about the personal identity? So what? If the me in the mirror is a complex set of conditions and causes, what else is there? Ajahn Sumedho talks about allowing this illusory world to fall apart. He encourages us to trust in just a simple act of attention, of awareness. When perceiving myself as the great creator of that morning's chaos, I was able to follow that teaching and allow meditation to open my mind beyond the perception and into the simple awareness of what I was perceiving. The faithful daily practice of meditation gives us the ability to get in touch with the awareness underlying our perceptions. Trusting in that awareness is what we do each time we bring our wandering minds back to the place of meditation. Just as musicians must practice scales and finger exercises before being able to go out and play concerts, we do our daily practice of meditation. Then, when we perceive our so-called selves in grandiose and/or negative ways, we're able to bring ourselves back into pure awareness and carry on. Ajahn Sumedho urges us to learn the difference between perceptions and awareness. He writes about our relationship to the personality, the body, and the emotional habits and thoughts that arise. And he says, our relationship to them now is understanding or embracing, rather than identifying. Just to recognize that it's just a very simple act of attention to come back to center, not grasping nor pushing away. Sound familiar? So, to sum up, the important thing about this notion of identity, for me at this point in my training, is that our true identity doesn't depend on any conditions. It's of the unborn, unconditioned, undying. In the words of Great Master Keizan, the depth of the ocean is still, even when there's a great storm on its surface. By not taking things personally and judging ourselves, we can let go of the habitual and false notions of who and what we are. And we can just be. Thank you all very much.